The gymnasium of Emsley A. Laney High School fell silent as Michael Jordan approached the microphone. Students and teachers leaned forward, eager to hear from the basketball legend who had walked these same halls 40 years ago. But no one, not the freshman computer whiz Marcus Washington, not the current basketball stars, not even Principal Marshall, could have predicted what Jordan was about to reveal. I've been in arenas with 20,000 people. I've played in NBA finals with millions. Watching! I've stood on Olympic podiums and met presidents, Jordan began, his deep voice filling the space. But coming back here, this is different. This is where it all started, where I learned the most important lessons of my life, including one lesson I never told anyone about until today. His next words would not only change how they saw the greatest basketball player of all time, they would transform how they understood failure, success, and the power of turning rejection into the fuel that drives greatness. The clock on the wall of Mr. Saunders's English class seemed frozen at 1:45 p.m. Marcus Washington stared at it, willing the minute hand to move faster. Only 15 more minutes until the final bell. He shifted in his seat, trying to focus on the grammar worksheet in front of him. "Remember, everyone," Mr. Saunders said, walking between the rows of desks, "these subject-verb agreement exercises are due tomorrow. No excuses." Marcus sighed. He was good at English, but today his mind kept wandering. His mom had the late shift at the hospital again, which meant another dinner alone. Maybe he'd work on his coding project after homework. The program he was building might not impress the basketball players who ruled Laney High, but it made him happy. The crackle of the intercom made everyone look up. "Attention, students and faculty of Emsley A. Laney High School." Principal Marshall's voice filled the room. "I have an extraordinary announcement to make." The class perked up. Principal Marshall usually saved the intercom for boring reminders about parking rules or upcoming tests. "Next Thursday, our school will welcome back our most distinguished graduate. I am thrilled to announce that Michael Jordan will be visiting Laney High." The classroom erupted. Students jumped from their seats, some cheering, others looking at each other in disbelief. Mr. Saunders dropped his dry erase marker. "Did she just say, Michael Jordan?" "The Michael Jordan?" Principal Marshall continued, her voice fighting to be heard over the growing excitement throughout the school. "Mr. Jordan will speak at a special assembly and meet with selected students and faculty. Further details will be provided to teachers tomorrow. That is all." The class was chaos now. Mr. Saunders didn't even try to restore order. He looked as excited as the students. "Can you believe it?" Zoe Chen turned to Marcus, her eyes wide. "The greatest basketball player ever, right here." Marcus shrugged. "I guess it's cool." Zoe rolled her eyes. "Cool? It's Michael Jordan. 6 NBA championships. The shoes. Space Jam." "I know who he is," Marcus said. "Everyone knows who Michael Jordan is." In truth, Marcus didn't understand the fuss. Sure, Jordan was famous, but he'd left Wilmington decades ago and never looked back. Now he was coming to show off how successful he'd become? It seemed like a publicity stunt. From the front of the room, Tyler Jenkins, the star of the freshman basketball team, held court with his friends. "My dad says Jordan's the reason we got the new gym back in the 90s, Tyler said loudly. "He donated a ton of money after his first championship." Tyler noticed Marcus watching and smirked. "Washington, you gonna ask His Airness for basketball? Tips? Maybe he can help you hit the backboard at least." His friends laughed. Marcus felt his cheeks burn. Last month in gym class, his basketball shot had missed everything. Rim, backboard, everything. And Tyler had made sure no one forgot it. I bet he's just coming to show off his fancy cars and championship rings, Marcus muttered, just loud, enough for those nearby to hear. What's he gonna tell us? Work hard and you too can be a billionaire? Yeah, right. A few students glanced at Marcus with surprise. He usually kept quiet when Tyler targeted him. The bell finally rang, and students poured into the hallway, the news about Jordan spreading like wildfire. Marcus stuffed his grammar worksheet into his backpack and headed for his locker, swimming against the tide of excitement. The hallways of Laney High looked like they always did. Blue lockers lining the walls, championship banners hanging from the ceiling, the trophy case near the front entrance showcasing the school's athletic achievements. But now everyone was gathered around the basketball section where Jordan's jersey hung behind glass. Marcus sidestepped the crowd. He had a long walk home and dark clouds threatened rain. Outside, the humid North Carolina air wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. Marcus thought about Jordan as he walked. What was someone like that really like in person? Was he actually coming back to inspire kids, or just to remind everyone how great he was? Marcus remembered the Nike posters in the gym. Jordan soaring, through the air, tongue out, making the impossible look easy. What could someone who'd never failed at anything possibly say to a kid like him? The first raindrops began to fall as Marcus turned onto his street. He picked up his pace, thinking about the coding project waiting on his computer. At least in that world, he understood the rules. You either wrote the right code or you didn't. No popularity contests, no athletic ability required, just logic, effort, and persistence. As the rain fell harder, Marcus wondered what Jordan would really be like. Maybe the basketball legend would surprise him, but Marcus doubted it. People, like Michael Jordan, lived in a different world, a world where doors always opened, where success came naturally, where no one ever laughed at your dreams. A world nothing like his own. The next morning, gray clouds still hung over Wilmington. The rain had cleared, but the air felt heavy with moisture. Marcus arrived at school early, hoping to finish his homework. In the library before first period. As he walked past the gym, he heard the familiar squeak of basketball shoes on polished wood. The freshman team had morning practice on Tuesdays. Out of curiosity, he peeked through the small window in the door. Inside, the team ran drills under the watchful eye of Coach Wallace Carter. At 73 years old, Coach Carter was a Laney High legend. He walked with a slight limp now, but his voice still boomed across the court. "Jenkins, pass the ball. This isn't a one-man show." Marcus watched as Tyler reluctantly passed to a teammate. Even Marcus could tell Tyler was talented, quick, athletic, and confident. Everything Marcus wasn't. He was about to continue to the library when Coach Carter blew his whistle. "Gather round, everyone. Practice is over early today. I've got something important to tell you." The players huddled around the old coach, and to Marcus's surprise, Coach Carter waved at him through the window. "You too, young man. Come in." Startled, Marcus pushed open the heavy door and awkwardly joined the edge of the group. The basketball players looked at him with confusion. "What's Computer Boy doing here?" Tyler whispered to a teammate, Coach Carter. Overheard. "Everyone's welcome to hear this story. It might be the most important lesson you'll learn in this gym." He sat down slowly on the bleachers, gesturing for the boys to sit on the floor in front of him. His weathered face looked serious. "You all think you know Michael Jordan's story," he began, his voice gravelly with age. "The championships, the shoes, the dunks. But you don't know the real story, especially what happened right here at Laney." The gym fell silent. Marcus found himself leaning forward. I've been at this school for 51 years, Coach Carter continued. Started as a math teacher in 1974, then became assistant coach for the basketball team. I was here when a skinny sophomore named Mike Jordan tried out for varsity in 1978. "Wait," interrupted one of the players. "Michael Jordan tried out for the team? I thought he was always the star." Coach Carter shook his head. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. Michael Jordan wasn't always Michael Jordan." He emphasized the name. Back then, he was just Mike, a skinny kid who loved basketball but wasn't anything special, at least not yet. Marcus felt a strange sensation in his stomach. This didn't match the picture he had of Jordan. When he tried out for varsity as a sophomore, he was only about 5'10", didn't have the size or the skills we were looking for. So, he didn't make the cut. Coach Carter's eyes seemed far away, seeing something from long ago. Coach Herring posted the roster, and Mike's name wasn't on it. The gym was completely silent now. Even Tyler looked shocked. Some of the varsity players were there when Mike checked the list, Coach Carter continued. They laughed at him. Not just a little chuckle, but real laughter. Called him names, said he wasn't good enough. And Mike just stood there, taking it. Marcus swallowed hard. He knew exactly how that felt. Mike went home and cried in his room, Coach Carter revealed. His mother said it was the first time she'd seen him truly heartbroken. One of the freshman players raised his hand. But he eventually made the team, right? Oh, he did more than make the team. Coach Carter smiled slightly. After getting cut, that boy changed. He grew several inches that year, for one thing. But more importantly, his attitude changed. He started training like nobody I've ever seen. Before school, after school, weekends, he'd play against grown men, in pickup games just to get better. Coach Carter stood up slowly, walking to the wall where jerseys hung in frames. The next year, as a junior, he didn't just make varsity, he became our star. By senior year, he was All-American. Then he went to North Carolina, hit that championship-winning shot, got drafted by the Bulls, and, well, you know the rest. He turned back to the group of boys. But none of that, not the championships, not the millions of dollars, not the fame, none of it would have happened if he'd quit after getting cut. If he'd let those laughing boys define who he was. Marcus felt something stir inside him. Could it be true? Had Michael Jordan, the legend, really experienced failure and ridicule? "Why are you telling us this now, Coach?" Tyler asked, his usual cockiness absent. "Because when Michael Jordan walks through those doors next week, I want you to see more than just a famous rich guy. I want you to remember he walked these same hallways, sat in the same classrooms, and got laughed at on this very court." Coach Carter's voice grew serious. "And I want you to think about how you treat each other, about how your words can either crush someone or push them to greatness." His eyes scanned the group, lingering briefly on Tyler, then Marcus. "Success leaves clues, boys, but so does failure. The difference is what you do after you fail." He checked his watch. "Now get cleaned up and get to class." As the players headed to the locker room, Marcus stayed behind. He approached Coach Carter, cautiously. "Coach Carter? I'm Marcus Washington. I was just passing by, but thank you for letting me listen." The old coach studied him. "You're not on the team." "No, sir. I'm not very good at basketball." Marcus hesitated. "Actually, I'm pretty terrible." Coach Carter chuckled. "So was Bill Gates, I hear. What are you good at, son?" "Computers, math. I'm building a program that—" Marcus stopped. "Sorry, you probably don't care about that." "Why wouldn't I care?" Coach Carter asked. "This school isn't just about basketball, you know. Jordan might be our most famous graduate, but he's not our only successful one. Marcus didn't know what to say. A teacher had never shown interest in his coding before. You know, Coach Carter said thoughtfully, everyone's got their own court to play on, their own game to master. Sounds like you've found yours. The first bell rang, echoing through the empty gym. You better get to class, Coach Carter said, but remember what I told you all today. And when Jordan comes next week, listen carefully. Not just to what he says, but to what his life teaches. As Marcus hurried to his first class, his mind was spinning. The story of Jordan failing, being laughed at, then working harder than everyone else, it changed something in how Marcus saw the basketball legend. For the first time, he felt genuinely curious about Michael Jordan's visit. Not because Jordan was famous, but because maybe, just maybe, they had something in common after all. When Marcus got home that afternoon, the small apartment was empty. His mom had left a note on the refrigerator. Lasagna in the oven. Heat for 20 minutes at 300 Fahrenheit. Love you. Mom. Marcus smiled at the heart she'd drawn next to her name. His mom always found ways to show she cared, even when her nursing schedule kept her busy. While the lasagna heated, Marcus set the table for two. His mom would be home around 6:30, tired from her shift, but always wanting to hear about his day. Today, he actually had something interesting to tell her. The door opened just as he was taking the bubbling lasagna out of the oven. Something smells delicious, Tanya Washington said, dropping her purse on the counter. Though tired, her smile was warm. Just following your instructions, Marcus replied, setting the dish on the table. As they ate, Marcus told her about the announcement of Jordan's visit. His mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Michael Jordan? Coming to Laney? Her eyes widened. When? Next Thursday. The whole school's talking about it. Tanya shook her head in disbelief. Well, I never thought I'd see the day. Why's that? Marcus asked, suddenly curious about her reaction. You know, I was a freshman when he was a senior, she revealed, surprising Marcus. Everyone knew he was special, even then. Wait, you went to school with Michael Jordan? Marcus couldn't hide his shock. His mother had mentioned attending Laney, but never this detail. It was a big school, honey. We weren't friends or anything. She smiled at a memory. But I remember once, my arms were full of books, and he held the door for me. Just a normal, polite kid who happened to fly through the air when he played basketball. Marcus digested this information. Today, Coach Carter told us Jordan got cut from varsity when he was a sophomore, that some of the players laughed at him. That's true, his mother nodded. It was a big deal when he made varsity the next year. He'd grown taller and gotten so much better. Everyone noticed the change. Marcus pushed his lasagna around his plate. Still, he's probably just coming back to get praised more. People like that don't care about regular kids like me. Marcus, his mother said firmly, putting down her fork. Don't judge someone you've never met. Michael Jordan worked for everything he got. Nobody gave him anything. I guess, Marcus shrugged, unconvinced. After dinner, Marcus helped with the dishes, then retreated to his room. He should start his homework, but Coach Carter's story had planted a seed of curiosity. Opening his laptop, Marcus typed Michael Jordan failure into the search bar. Millions of results appeared. He clicked on a video titled Michael Jordan on Failure. The video showed Jordan speaking to a group of kids at a basketball camp. His deep voice filled Marcus's small bedroom. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. Marcus rewound the video and played it again. Something about Jordan's words didn't fit the image Marcus had of the perfect superstar who never struggled. He clicked. Another link, this one about Jordan's famous flu game in the 1997 NBA Finals, where he scored 38 points while severely sick. Then another about how Jordan returned to basketball after his father's murder, and another about his brief baseball career, a rare professional failure. For hours, Marcus fell down a rabbit hole of Jordan stories and videos. The more he watched and read, the more complex the picture became. This wasn't just a famous rich guy coming to show off. This was someone who had faced real challenges, different from Marcus's own, but challenges nonetheless. A knock on his door interrupted his research. "It's almost midnight, honey," his mom said, peeking in. "School tomorrow." "Sorry, I was reading." "About Jordan," Marcus admitted, surprised at himself. His mother smiled knowingly. "Finding out he's human after all?" "Maybe," Marcus replied. "Did you know he tried professional baseball and wasn't very good? Or that he got cut from his elementary school basketball team too? Life has a way of testing everyone, famous or not," she said, sitting on the edge of his bed. "That's what makes his story special. He wasn't born great, he became great." Marcus nodded slowly. "Coach Carter said the same thing." "Smart man," his mother replied, standing up. "Now get some sleep. You can become great tomorrow." As his mother closed the door, Marcus looked at his computer screen, frozen on an image of young Michael Jordan in his Laney High uniform. The skinny teenager in the photo didn't look like a future legend. He just looked like a kid with a dream. For the first time, Marcus wondered what Jordan might say at the assembly next week. And for the first time, he thought it might actually be worth hearing. The next morning, as Marcus walked to his locker, he noticed something different. Posters announcing Jordan's visit covered the hallways. Students clustered around them, buzzing with excitement. Tyler and his basketball teammates held court by the water fountain. "My dad says Jordan might bring some NBA players with him," Tyler announced loudly. "Maybe even some Hornets players." When he spotted Marcus, Tyler smirked. "Yo, Washington, you bringing your calculator to the Jordan assembly? Maybe you can compute his shooting percentage while real athletes ask him questions." In the past, Marcus would have lowered his head and walked faster. But today, something made him stop. "Actually," Marcus said clearly, "I read that Jordan has a photographic memory for basketball stats. He can remember the details of games from decades ago, exactly who scored what and when. Math matters in basketball too." Tyler looked surprised that Marcus had responded at all. Before he could come up with a retort, the bell rang. As Marcus walked to class, he felt a small spark of confidence. Maybe he and the basketball legend had more in common than he'd thought. Over the next few days, Laney High transformed. Custodians polished every surface until the floors gleamed. Like glass, the basketball court in the gym received a fresh coat of varnish. Display cases were dusted, trophies polished, and every speck of dirt banished. In the gym, a work crew hung a giant banner that read, "Welcome home, Michael Jordan, Laney Class of 1981. Beside it, they carefully mounted Jordan's framed #93 Laney jersey, which normally stayed locked in a special case near the principal's office. During lunch on Wednesday, Marcus sat alone at his usual table, coding on his laptop. He was deep in his program when someone set a tray down opposite him. "Mind if I sit here?" Marcus looked up to see Zoe Chen, a girl from his English class. Sure, he said, surprised. Nobody ever chose to sit with him. Zoe nodded at his screen. What are you working on? Just a program I'm building. It's a game that teaches coding basics to kids. To his surprise, Zoe looked genuinely interested. That's cool. My little brother might like that. He's 10 and already talks about wanting to make video games. Before Marcus could respond, the cafeteria speakers crackled to life. Principal Marshall's voice filled the room. Attention, students. As you know, Michael Jordan will be visiting our school tomorrow. During the assembly, selected students will have the opportunity to ask Mr. Jordan questions. The cafeteria buzzed with excitement. If you would like to be considered, please submit your question in writing to the office by 3 p.m. today. We will select 10 thoughtful questions for Mr. Jordan to answer during the assembly. As the announcement ended, students immediately began discussing what they would ask. I'm going to ask him which championship was his favorite, said a boy. At the next table. I want to know if he thinks LeBron is better, said another. Zoe looked at Marcus. Are you going to submit a question? Marcus hesitated. Yesterday, he wouldn't have considered it. But after what he'd learned about Jordan's path, maybe, he said finally. After lunch, Marcus sat in math class thinking. If he could ask Michael Jordan one question, what would it be? Not about basketball, statistics, or championships, or shoes. Something real. By the end of class, he had it. He quickly wrote his question on a slip of paper and headed to the office. The secretary, Mrs. Powell, looked surprised to see him. Marcus Washington, don't usually see you in here. I have a question for Mr. Jordan, he said, handing her the paper. Mrs. Powell added it to a growing stack. We've got over 100 already. Principal Marshall's going to have her work cut out for her. Marcus nodded, suddenly feeling foolish. His question would probably get buried in the pile. Why had he even bothered? The next morning, Marcus ate breakfast quickly. For the first time in months, he found himself caring about what he wore to school. He picked his newest jeans and a blue button-down shirt his mom had given him for his birthday. His mother noticed. You look nice today? Special occasion? Just the Jordan thing, Marcus mumbled, embarrassed. His mother smiled knowingly but didn't tease him. When Marcus arrived at school, the atmosphere was electric. News vans from local TV stations parked outside. A small crowd of people who weren't. Students or teachers gathered near the entrance, hoping for a glimpse of the basketball legend. Inside, Principal Marshall stood in the main hall, addressing a group of students. Marcus recognized some of them as class presidents and athletes. And remember, you're representing Laney, she was saying. Be respectful, professional, and make us proud. As Marcus passed, Principal Marshall called out to him, Marcus, just the person I was looking for. Confused, Marcus approached the group. Me? Yes, you. Principal Marshall held up a sheet of paper. Your question for Mr. Jordan was selected. You'll be asking it during the assembly today. Marcus felt his stomach drop. My question? Really? Yes, Principal Marshall smiled. It was thoughtful and different from the others. Most students asked about basketball stats or his favorite, dunks. You asked something deeper. Several students looked at Marcus with new interest, wondering what his question was. Be in the gym 15 minutes before the assembly starts, Principal Marshall instructed. We'll go over the procedure with all selected students. As the group dispersed, Tyler Jenkins approached Marcus, his face a mix of surprise and annoyance. You got selected? What did you ask? His tone wasn't friendly. Marcus hesitated, then decided to answer honestly. I asked what he did the day after. He got cut from the varsity team. Tyler's eyebrows shot up. That's your question? Not about his championships or his shoes or anything actually interesting? I think it's interesting, Marcus replied, feeling more confident than usual. Anyone can look up his stats or his shoe sales, but what he did right after failing, that tells you something about who he really is. Tyler seemed caught off guard by Marcus's response. A few students nearby had stopped to listen. Whatever, Tyler said finally. What do you know about basketball or Jordan? You can't even make a layup. Maybe that's why my question is better than yours, Marcus replied, surprising himself with his boldness. I didn't ask about his dunks or championships. A few students snickered, not at Marcus, but at Tyler, who flushed red and walked away. Quickly. Throughout the morning, a buzz of anticipation filled every classroom. Teachers tried to conduct normal lessons, but it was hopeless. Everyone was thinking about the afternoon assembly. During lunch, Marcus picked at his food, too nervous to eat. The reality of asking a question in front of the whole school. And Michael Jordan was sinking in. Zoe sat down beside him. I heard your question got picked. That's awesome. I think I'm going to throw up, Marcus admitted. You'll be fine, Zoe assured him. And it's a great question. My dad's a huge Jordan fan, and he has all these books about him. Last night I told him about your question, and he said it cuts right. To what made Jordan different from other talented players? Marcus looked at her with surprise. Really? Yeah. Dad says lots of players are gifted, but what separated Jordan was how he handled setbacks. She smiled encouragingly. So, your question matters. That afternoon, the local newspaper arrived at school to cover Jordan's visit. The front page featured a photo of a young Michael Jordan in his Laney uniform, alongside a recent picture of him in a business suit. The headline read, Air Jordan returns to where it all began. Marcus read the article carefully. It mentioned how Jordan had grown up in Wilmington, his parents' jobs, and his early struggles in basketball. The more Marcus learned, the more fascinating Jordan's story became. As the day of classes wound down, an announcement came over the intercom asking selected students to report to the gym. With a deep breath, Marcus gathered his courage and headed toward the biggest moment of his freshman year, and a face-to-face encounter with the legend whose story was beginning to change how he saw himself. Marcus joined 9 other students. In the gym, where Principal Marshall waited with a clipboard, the enormous space, usually filled with noise, felt strangely quiet. Thank you all for being prompt, Principal Marshall said. As our selected question askers, you'll sit in the front row during the assembly. When I call your name, you'll approach the microphone, state your name and grade, then ask your question clearly. A woman with a Wilmington News ID badge approached. Principal Marshall, do we know what time Mr. Jordan's convoy will arrive? They're en route now, Principal Marshall replied. Security is already in position. Marcus hadn't thought about security. Of course, someone as famous as Jordan would need protection. Since we have a few minutes, Principal Marshall continued, Mr. Rodriguez needs help setting up the audio equipment. Any volunteers? Marcus raised his hand. Technology was his comfort zone. Perfect. Marcus, meet Mr. Rodriguez by the AV table. The school's audiovisual coordinator was struggling with microphone stands and cables. He looked relieved when Marcus approached. Thank goodness. Can you test these mics while I fix the feedback issue? For the next 20 minutes, Marcus worked, methodically, testing each microphone and adjusting sound levels. Working with the equipment calmed his nerves. This was something he understood. While he worked, the gym began filling with staff placing chairs and security personnel checking exits. Through the windows, Marcus could see students lining up outside, dressed in their best clothes, buzzing with excitement. Mr. Rodriguez handed Marcus a wireless microphone. "This is the one Mr. Jordan will use. Make sure it's perfect." Marcus felt the weight of the small device in his hand. Michael Jordan would speak into this very microphone, answering the question Marcus had written. Suddenly, a voice crackled over Mr. Rodriguez's radio. "Convoy approaching south entrance. 2 minutes." The gym erupted in activity. Principal Marshall directed teachers to their positions. Security personnel touched their earpieces and moved toward the doors. "Stay here and keep working," Mr. Rodriguez told Marcus. "We need to make sure everything's ready." Through the gym's back windows, Marcus saw 3 black SUVs with tinted windows pull up to the school's rear entrance. Men in suits emerged first, scanning the area. Then, the back door of the middle SUV opened. Even from a distance, Michael Jordan's presence was unmistakable. He unfolded from the vehicle, taller than everyone around him, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit. His shaved head gleamed in the sunlight, and his walk carried the confidence of someone who had conquered the world. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. This wasn't just a famous person. This was Michael Jordan, the actual human being who had walked these same hallways, faced failure in this very gym, and gone on to become perhaps the most famous athlete in history. As Jordan approached the back entrance with Principal Marshall, who had hurried outside to greet him, he happened to glance up at the gym windows. For a brief moment, his eyes met Marcus's. Time seemed to stop. Jordan's expression was serious, focused, but he acknowledged Marcus with a slight nod. Without thinking, Marcus nodded back. Then the moment passed. Jordan entered the building, surrounded by his entourage and school officials. Marcus exhaled, realizing he'd been holding his breath. "He's here! He's really here!" Mr. Rodriguez said, checking his equipment one last time. "How does the wireless mic sound?" Marcus snapped back to attention, testing the microphone again. "It's perfect." From his position near the AV table, Marcus could hear fragments of conversation as Principal Marshall led Jordan on a brief tour of the school's entrance area. "Completely renovated since your time here, but we've preserved. The trophy case with your memorabilia is our most popular," Jordan's deep voice responded, too low for Marcus to catch the words. As they moved toward the main hallway, Marcus grabbed the microphone Jordan would use and hurried after Mr. Rodriguez, who was following the tour. Principal Marshall was showing Jordan the Hall of Fame display where photos of the school's most accomplished graduates hung. Jordan's photo, in his Chicago Bulls uniform, soaring toward a dunk, was largest and centered. "We're extremely proud of all you've accomplished," Principal Marshall said. Jordan studied the display thoughtfully, then turned to look down the main hallway, with its blue lockers and championship banners. "It's smaller than I remember," he said with a quiet laugh. His voice was deeper than Marcus expected, with a gentle North Carolina accent that hadn't fully disappeared despite decades away. As the tour continued past classrooms and the library, Marcus trailed behind with Mr. Rodriguez, carrying the microphone. He noticed something surprising. Jordan wasn't just nodding politely as Principal Marshall spoke. He seemed genuinely interested, even emotional at times, pausing to look into classrooms or touch the walls as if confirming they were real. At one point, Jordan stopped at a particular locker and smiled slightly. "This was mine," he said. "Number 916. Principal Marshall looked surprised. "You remember your locker number after all these years?" "I remember everything about this place," Jordan replied, his voice soft but intense. "Every hallway, every classroom." He paused. "Every moment." Something in his tone made Marcus shiver. There was weight behind those words, meaning Marcus couldn't quite grasp. But he sensed that this visit meant more to Michael Jordan than anyone had expected, perhaps even Jordan himself. The tour ended back at the gym doors, where they would enter for the assembly. The entire school waited inside. Jordan straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and nodded to Principal Marshall. "Let's do this." As the doors opened, Marcus clutched the microphone he would soon hand to the legend. In just minutes, he would ask his question in front of the entire school. But now, having glimpsed the human being behind the myth, Marcus was no longer simply nervous. He was curious. The gym doors swung open, and the roar hit Marcus like a physical force. Every student, teacher, and staff member of Laney High School was on their feet, cheering, clapping, and shouting as Michael Jordan entered. The basketball court had been transformed. Hundreds of chairs filled the floor in neat rows. A stage with a podium stood at the center of what would normally be center court. Banners hung from the ceiling. "Welcome home, Michael Jordan," and "Laney Pride." Marcus hurried to his place with the other students who would ask questions, clutching the wireless microphone. Mr. Rodriguez gave him a thumbs up from the AV station. Principal Marshall led Jordan toward the stage, stopping occasionally so he could shake hands with teachers or administrators. Flashbulbs popped as photographers captured every moment. Local news cameras tracked his movement. Marcus studied Jordan's face. The basketball legend smiled and nodded at people. But Marcus noticed something in his eyes. A hint of what might have been nervousness or emotion. It was hard to tell. As Jordan reached the stage, Marcus handed the wireless microphone to Principal Marshall, who checked it quickly before passing it to Jordan. For a brief moment, Marcus stood close enough to the basketball legend to notice details. His perfectly polished shoes, the championship ring on his finger, the subtle cologne he wore. "Thank you, young man," Jordan said directly to Marcus, his voice low. "You're welcome, sir," Marcus managed to reply before returning to his seat in the front row. Principal Marshall approached the podium as Jordan took a seat in an oversized chair on the stage. The crowd gradually quieted. Students, faculty, and special guests. Today marks a historic moment for Emsley A. Laney High School, Principal Marshall began. "We are honored to welcome home our most distinguished graduate." She turned toward Jordan. "His achievements hardly need listing, but I'll do so anyway." The crowd chuckled. 6 NBA championships with the Chicago Bulls. 5 Most Valuable Player awards. 14 NBA All-Star selections. 2 Olympic gold medals. His Airness is also a successful businessman, majority owner of the Charlotte Hornets, and founder of the Jordan brand at Nike. The applause was thunderous. Jordan nodded in acknowledgement, his expression serious. But beyond these achievements, Principal Marshall continued, Michael Jordan's greatest legacy may be his determination and work ethic. The qualities he developed right here at Laney have inspired generations of athletes and non-athletes alike. She gestured toward Jordan. "Please join me in welcoming home Michael Jordan, Laney High School class of 1981. The gym erupted again as Jordan stood and approached the podium. He adjusted the microphone, waited for the cheering to subside, and looked out over the crowd. His TV gaze moved slowly across the gym, as if taking in every detail, every face. The silence grew deeper as he continued to scan the room without speaking. Marcus felt his heart pounding. What was he waiting for? Finally, Jordan spoke. "Thank you, Principal Marshall. Thank you to all the teachers, staff, and students for this welcome." His voice was calm, measured, filling the gym without seeming to raise its volume. "I've been in arenas with 20,000 people. I've played in NBA finals with millions watching. I've stood on Olympic podiums and met presidents." He paused. "But coming back here, this is different. This is where it all started, where I learned the most important lessons of my life, including one lesson I never told anyone about until today. The gym fell completely silent. Even the teachers looked at each other in confusion. What story about Laney High could Michael Jordan have kept secret all these years? Marcus leaned forward, in his seat, hanging on every word. "Many of you know parts of my story," Jordan continued. "You've probably heard how I didn't make the varsity team as a sophomore." Nods and murmurs spread through the crowd. "That's true. Coach Herring put the list up, and my name wasn't on it." Jordan's voice remained steady, but Marcus noticed his hands tighten slightly on the podium. What you might not know is how that moment felt. Standing there, staring at that list, feeling like I'd failed, feeling embarrassed, feeling like maybe I wasn't good enough. The students sat perfectly still, many with wide eyes. Michael Jordan, talking about not being good enough? Some people think I just shrugged it off, worked harder, and moved on. That's the story everyone tells. But the truth is more complicated and more human. Jordan looked around the gym again, his eyes stopping briefly at the spot where, 40 years earlier, the roster had been posted. I went home that day and cried in my room. Actually, cried real tears. I felt like I'd let my family down, let myself down. I questioned whether I should even keep playing basketball. Marcus glanced at the other students in the front row. Everyone looked shocked. This wasn't the unshakable, superhuman Michael Jordan they'd expected. This was someone who had felt pain, doubt, and failure, just like them. "The reason I'm telling you this," Jordan continued, "is because we live in a world of highlights. You see the dunks, the championships, the success. You don't see the thousands of hours of practice. You don't see the failures, the doubts, the pain." He stepped out from behind the podium, microphone in hand, and moved to the front of the stage. Everyone in this room will face moments when you don't make the cut, when you don't get the job, the scholarship, the relationship, the opportunity you wanted, when people laugh at your dreams or tell you you're not good enough. He paused, his eyes sweeping across the silent gym. Those moments will define you, not because they stop you, but because they show you who you really are when things get hard. Jordan moved across the stage, his presence commanding the room. The morning after I didn't make varsity, I had a choice. I could quit, or I could work harder than I'd ever worked before. He smiled slightly. My mother had something to say about that choice. She told me, "Don't let other people decide what you can become." Marcus thought about his own mother saying something similar just days ago. So I grew, physically, yes, from 5'10" to 6'3" in that year. But more importantly, I grew mentally. I learned that temporary failure isn't the same as defeat. I learned that other people's opinions of me didn't have to become my reality. Jordan's voice grew more intense. I came back the next year and made varsity. But here's what matters. Even if I hadn't made it, even if I'd never played another game of basketball in my life, that lesson would still have been the most valuable thing I ever learned, because it applies to everything. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Somehow, it felt like Jordan was speaking directly to him. So when you face your own moments of doubt, remember, it's not about never falling. It's about how you get back up. It's about turning disappointment into fuel. Jordan returned to the podium, his expression softening. I've achieved things beyond what that sophomore crying in his bedroom could have imagined. But I'm still that same kid, in many ways. Still trying to prove something, still turning doubts into determination. He smiled genuinely for the first time since beginning his speech. "Now, I understand some of you have questions for me, and I want to hear them. But first, I want to thank the teachers who pushed me, the coaches who believed in me, and yes, even those who didn't. You all played a part in this journey." Principal Marshall approached the podium again, visibly moved by Jordan's words. "Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for that powerful message. We'll now move to the student questions." She explained the format and called the first student to the microphone. A senior basketball player asked Jordan about his favorite championship. Jordan answered thoughtfully, describing the first championship in 1991 and how it validated all his hard work. More questions followed, about his shoes, about playing with Scottie Pippen, about owning the Hornets. With each answer, Jordan became more relaxed, even laughing occasionally. But Marcus noticed how he gave each question real consideration, never rushing his responses, or giving standard, rehearsed answers. Finally, Principal Marshall called Marcus Washington, freshman. Marcus's legs felt like jelly as he approached the microphone. The entire gym, over 1,000 people, waited for him to speak. And Michael, Jordan himself, leaned forward slightly, giving Marcus his full attention. Marcus took a deep breath and found his voice. "Mr. Jordan, what did you do the day after you got cut from the varsity team?" The gym fell silent as Michael Jordan considered Marcus's question. Jordan's expression changed subtly, eyebrows lifting slightly, eyes focusing more intently on Marcus. "What's your name again, young man?" Jordan asked. "Marcus Washington, sir." Jordan nodded slowly. "That's a smart question, Marcus." He stepped away from the podium, microphone in hand, and moved to the edge of the stage closest to where Marcus stood. "Most people ask about the championships, or the dunks, or the shoes," Jordan continued. "But you're asking about the day after failure, the day that actually mattered most." Marcus felt a mix of pride and nervousness as hundreds of eyes shifted between him and the basketball legend. "The day after I got cut from varsity," Jordan began, "I woke up before dawn. I couldn't sleep anyway. My eyes were still swollen from crying." The gym was utterly silent. Even the teachers seemed surprised by Jordan's candor. "I went to the outdoor court near my house. It was still dark out. Cold, too. October in North Carolina. Maybe 50 degrees. No one else was crazy enough to be playing basketball at 5:30 in the morning." Jordan's voice took on a rhythmic quality, like he was replaying the memory in real time. "I made myself a promise that morning. I promised I would make 300 shots before I stopped. Not attempts, made shots. It took almost 3 hours." He held up his hands, looking at them as if he could still see the evidence. "My hands were bleeding by the end. The ball was rough, and I'd shot so many times that my skin was raw. But I needed to prove something to myself, not to anyone else." Jordan looked directly at Marcus. "You want to know the strange part? I wasn't even angry anymore. By the time I made that last shot, I felt grateful." Murmurs spread through the crowd. "Grateful?" Marcus asked without thinking, then immediately blushed at his boldness. Jordan didn't seem to mind the interruption. "Yes, grateful. Because getting cut was the first time in my life I'd faced real athletic failure, and I discovered something important about myself. Failure lit a fire in me that success never could." He began pacing slowly across the stage. "There were some guys, varsity players, standing there when I saw that list without my name. They laughed at me." Jordan's voice remained steady, but Marcus noticed his jaw tighten slightly. Not just a little chuckle. but real laughter. One of them said, "Looks like you're not as good as you thought you were, Jordan." The gym was so quiet Marcus could hear the air conditioning humming. Those boys who laughed at me that day, they weren't bad people. They were just teenagers who didn't know any better. Jordan's expression softened, and their laughter became the fuel for everything that came after. He described how he grew several inches that year, how he trained every morning before school and every evening after, how he played against grown men in local games to improve, how his hands developed calluses until the basketball felt like part of him. My sophomore year, I averaged about 20 points per game on the junior varsity team. Jordan continued, "My junior year, I averaged 25 points on varsity. My senior year, I became an All-American and got a scholarship to North Carolina." He looked around the gym, his gaze stopping at the championship banners hanging from the ceiling. But none of that would have happened without that day, the day I didn't see my name on the list, and the day after, when I had to decide who I was going to be. Jordan turned back to Marcus. "So, to answer your question directly, what did I do the day after getting cut? I made a choice. I chose to use rejection as fuel rather than let it destroy me. And that made all the difference." He stepped closer, to the edge of the stage, looking intently at Marcus. "Why did you ask that question?" Marcus felt hundreds of eyes turn to him. His heart hammered in his chest. But somehow, the genuine interest in Jordan's expression gave him courage. "Because I've been laughed at too," Marcus answered honestly, his voice shaking slightly. "Not for basketball, but for other things. I wanted to know if it still hurt you, or if you just forgot about it." For a moment, Jordan didn't respond. He seemed to be truly considering Marcus's words. "It still matters," he finally said. "Not the pain, but the lesson. Getting knocked down isn't failure. Staying down is. A wave of understanding passed between them. The towering basketball legend and the freshman boy who loved computers. In that moment, despite their obvious differences, Marcus felt a connection with Michael Jordan that he'd never expected. Then Jordan addressed the entire gym again. "I want to tell you something I've never shared publicly before." The crowd leaned forward collectively. "There were two teachers in this school who changed my life. One believed in me from the beginning. My English teacher, Mrs. Throneberry. She told me I had potential beyond basketball. She pushed me to read, to think, to express myself." He paused, his expression growing more serious. The other was a math teacher who also worked as an assistant coach, Coach Durham. On the day the varsity roster was posted, he was standing with those players who laughed at me. A heavy silence fell over the gym. This was clearly painful for Jordan to share. "In fact," Jordan continued, his voice quieter now, "Coach Durham laughed too. He said something like, 'Some kids just don't have what it takes.'" Shocked whispers spread through the crowd. Teachers exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the inspirational story they'd expected. "I heard him," Jordan said. "I saw him, and those words burned into my memory. Every sprint I ran, every shot I practiced, every weight I lifted. I heard those words." He took a deep breath before continuing. "I never confronted him about it. Never told anyone, actually. But I made a silent promise that I would prove him wrong. Not just with basketball success, but by becoming the kind of person who lifts others up instead of tearing them down." Jordan looked around the gym again, his expression softening. "Coach Durham retired long before I became famous. I doubt he ever knew how much his words affected me. And I'm not telling this story to embarrass him or make him feel bad. I'm telling it because sometimes the people who don't believe in you end up motivating you more than those who do." Marcus thought about Tyler and the other kids who had laughed at him. Could their doubt somehow become his fuel? The people who support you matter enormously, Jordan continued. My family, Mrs. Throneberry, Coach Herring, who cut me but encouraged me to work harder. I wouldn't be here without them. But sometimes, the people who doubt you matter too. Not because they're right, but because proving them wrong can push you to heights you never imagined. As Jordan finished speaking, the gym remained completely silent. His confession had struck a chord with everyone present, from freshmen just beginning their high school journey to teachers who suddenly reflected on the impact their words might have on students. Principal Marshall appeared unsure how to respond to this unexpected revelation. She approached the microphone, thanking Jordan for his honesty and calling for the next student question. But Marcus barely heard what followed. His mind was racing with a new understanding of what had brought Michael Jordan back to Laney High. After all these years, it wasn't just to be celebrated, it was to share the full truth of his journey. The pain, along with the triumph. The assembly continued as other students asked their questions. A tall girl from the varsity basketball team asked about Jordan's favorite teammate. A boy from the school newspaper asked about his business success with Nike. A senior asked for advice about college. Jordan answered each question thoughtfully, often with humor, and always with honesty. But Marcus noticed that something had shifted in the atmosphere. After Jordan's confession about Coach Durham, the questions became less about basketball statistics and more about life lessons. How do you handle pressure? Asked a quiet junior. I practice harder than I play, Jordan replied. If you've already faced the worst in practice, the game feels easier. Did you ever want to quit? Asked another student. Every great journey has moments where quitting seems like the only option, Jordan answered. The key is surrounding yourself with people who won't let you. As Jordan spoke, Marcus studied him carefully. This wasn't the smiling pitchman from commercials or the fierce competitor from highlight reels. This was someone more complex, humble yet confident, serious yet occasionally playful. Marcus was so focused on Jordan that he almost missed Principal Marshall announcing, "We have time for one final question before Mr. Jordan meets with smaller groups." A senior boy approached the microphone. "Mr. Jordan, with all your success, what's your biggest regret?" The gym fell silent again. It was a bold question, perhaps too personal. Jordan didn't answer immediately. He seemed to be deciding how much to share. "My biggest regret," he finally said, "is not telling my father everything he meant to me before he was killed." The raw honesty stunned the room. Jordan's father, James, had been murdered in 1993, a tragedy that had led to Jordan's first retirement from basketball. "I thought we had more time," Jordan continued, his voice steady but softer. "I thought there would be more championships to share, more moments together. His death taught me that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So don't leave important things unsaid." Principal Marshall stepped forward, visibly moved. "Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for your candor and wisdom. Students, please join me in showing our appreciation." Gym erupted in applause as Jordan nodded in acknowledgement. Unlike the cheers that had greeted his entrance, this applause felt different to Marcus. More respectful than excited, more grateful than starstruck. As the assembly concluded, Principal Marshall announced that Jordan would now meet with smaller groups, the basketball teams, the business class, and students selected for a special lunch. The students began filing out of the gym, buzzing with conversation about what they'd heard. Teachers guided them toward their next classes, though Marcus suspected not much regular learning would happen that day. As Marcus prepared to leave with the other question askers, Mr. Rodriguez approached him. "Principal Marshall wants you to stay, Marcus." "Me? Why?" Mr. Jordan specifically requested that you join the lunch group. Marcus's heart skipped. He asked for me? Are you sure? Mr. Rodriguez nodded. By name, said the kid with the good question should join them. Marcus remained in the gym as it emptied, watching as Jordan posed for photos with teachers and administrators. Even with cameras pointed at him, Jordan's focus never seemed to waver when speaking with people. He listened intently, giving each person his full attention. After most people had left, Jordan's security team guided him toward a smaller room off the main gym, the team meeting room where coaches reviewed game footage. Inside, tables had been arranged with catered food for about 20 people. Marcus lingered near the door, unsure if he should enter. He felt out of place among the student government officers and top athletes who had been selected for this honor. Had I seen then, he hesitated. Jordan appeared in the doorway. Marcus Washington, he said, remembering without prompting. Come on in. I saved you a seat. Stunned that Jordan remembered his name, Marcus followed him into the room. True to his word, there was an empty chair next to Jordan's place at the head of the table. The lunch was less formal than Marcus had expected. Jordan asked questions about school life, listened to stories about teachers, some of whom had taught during his time, and shared memories of his own high school days. The science lab still smells exactly the same, Jordan said, laughing. Some things never change. To Marcus's surprise, Jordan spoke less about basketball and more about perseverance, failure, and growth. He told stories many hadn't heard before, about business failures, about trusting the wrong people, about losing his father. Success leaves clues, but so does failure, he said. I learned more from my failures than my successes. When a teacher asked why he decided to visit Laney now, after all these years, Jordan didn't answer directly. He just said, some debts need to be paid in person. Throughout lunch, Marcus noticed Jordan checking his watch several times. At first, he thought the basketball legend might be bored or eager to leave, but Jordan seemed genuinely engaged with everyone. Something else was on his mind. As dessert was served, Marcus found the courage to speak directly to Jordan. Mr. Jordan, he said quietly, so only Jordan could hear, thank you for answering my question. It helped me. Jordan studied him with those intense eyes. You remind me of myself at your age. Not physically, I was already basketball obsessed, but that look in your eyes, you're figuring something out about yourself. Marcus was amazed at Jordan's perceptiveness. I'm trying to. What do you love? Jordan asked. What makes you lose track of time? Computers, coding, building things that work. Jordan nodded. Then that's your court. That's where you practice your fadeaway jumper. But I get laughed at for that too, Marcus admitted. Good, Jordan said with unexpected intensity. Let them laugh. In 20 years, they'll pretend they always supported you. I've seen it happen. As lunch concluded, Principal Marshall announced that Jordan would now meet privately with the basketball teams. The students thanked him and began to leave. Jordan shook hands with each person. When Marcus's turn came, Jordan held his grip a moment longer. Your question mattered, he said. Keep asking good questions. As Marcus left the room, he felt different somehow. Lighter, yet stronger. As if a weight had been lifted, while something else, something better, had taken its place. Behind him, he heard Jordan ask Principal Marshall, Is he here yet? Mr. Durham? Yes, he's waiting in the gym, as you requested. Marcus stopped walking. Mr. Durham? Coach Durham? The teacher who had laughed at Jordan? A mix of curiosity and concern pulled Marcus back toward the gym. Without fully deciding to do so, he found himself taking a detour, moving quietly down the empty hallway, that led to the basketball court. Marcus moved cautiously down the hallway, drawn by a mixture of curiosity and something he couldn't quite name. The main corridor was empty now, with most students back in class, and Jordan's security team focused on the room where he was meeting with the basketball teams. As Marcus approached the gym, he heard voices coming from inside. He stopped just short of the double doors, which were slightly ajar. Through the narrow gap, he could see Jordan standing near center court, alone. He appeared to be waiting for someone. Marcus knew he shouldn't be here, shouldn't be watching. But after everything he'd heard today, he felt strangely invested in what might happen next. A side door to the gym opened, and Principal Marshall entered with an elderly man. The man walked slowly with a metal cane, his back bent with age. He appeared to be in his 80s, with wispy white hair and glasses. Principal Marshall guided him carefully toward center court, where Jordan waited. "Mr. Durham, thank you for coming," Principal Marshall said. "As I mentioned on the phone, Mr. Jordan specifically requested to meet with you." Marcus's breath caught. This frail, elderly man was Coach Durham, the teacher who had laughed at young Michael Jordan 40 years ago. "I'll leave you two to talk," Principal Marshall said, then headed toward her office adjacent to the gym. Marcus ducked back as she passed near his hiding spot, then returned to his vantage point when the coast was clear. The gym was silent as Jordan and the elderly man regarded each other across a few feet of polished hardwood. Before either could speak, the gym's main doors opened on the opposite side. The varsity and JV basketball teams filed in, led by current head coach Tony Mitchell. The players stopped short when they saw Jordan already there, with the elderly man. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jordan," Coach Mitchell said. "We were told to come to the EEE gym at 1:30 for our meeting." Jordan turned, seeming to make a quick decision. "Actually, Coach, your timing is perfect. Could your teams take a seat in the bleachers? There's something important I'd like all of you to witness." The players looked at each other in confusion, but quickly did as Jordan asked, filing into the nearest bleachers. Marcus remained hidden in the doorway, heart pounding as he watched the scene unfold. Jordan turned back to Coach Durham. "Do you remember me, sir?" The old man squinted, studying Jordan's face. "You're the Jordan boy, Michael." "Yes, sir," Jordan replied. "I was in your math class, and you were an assistant coach when I tried out for varsity in 1978. Coach Durham nodded, slowly. "That was a long time ago." Jordan gestured to the basketball teams watching from the bleachers. "These young men are today's Laney Buccaneers. They're working hard, dreaming big, just like I was." Coach Durham looked over at the players, then back to Jordan. "You became something special. Something none of us could have predicted." A heavy silence followed. Marcus held his breath, wondering what Jordan would say next. Would he confront the old coach about laughing at him all those years ago? "Coach Durham," Jordan finally said, his voice steady but gentler than before. "I asked you here today because there's something these players need to hear. Something about failure, doubt, and what we do with rejection." He turned to the teams, in the bleachers. "When I was your age, I tried out for varsity as a sophomore. I didn't make the team. Coach Durham was there when they posted the roster without my name on it." The players leaned forward, sensing they were witnessing something significant. "Earlier today," Jordan continued, "I shared something I've never told anyone publicly. On that day, when I saw I didn't make the team, there were some varsity players who laughed at me, and Coach Durham was with them." The gym went completely silent. Some players glanced uncomfortably at the elderly man. "For years, that moment fueled me," Jordan said. "Every time I wanted to quit, every time my muscles screamed during training, I remembered those laughs. I used them as fuel, Coach Durham's wrinkled face showed shame as the memory returned. He gripped his cane tighter. "I've regretted that moment for 40 years," the old coach said quietly. His voice trembled but carried in the silent Jim. "I should have stopped those boys, not joined them. I want you to know I followed every game you ever played. I kept a scrapbook of your achievements. Not because you're famous, but because you proved me wrong in the best possible way." Jordan's stern expression softened. "I didn't come here for an apology, coach." The elderly man looked confused, as did the basketball players watching the exchange. "I came to thank you," Jordan said. A murmur of surprise spread through the bleachers. Coach Durham's eyes widened. "Without that moment, without your laughter, I might have been just another decent basketball player," Jordan explained. "That day lit a fire in me that never went out. In trying to prove you wrong, I found out who I really was." He stepped closer to the old coach. "So, in a strange way, I owe you my gratitude." Tears formed in Coach Durham's eyes. "I don't deserve your thanks, Michael." "We don't always get what we deserve," Jordan said, extending his hand. "Sometimes we get something better. We get a chance to make things right." As the two men shook hands, Jordan addressed the basketball teams. "Remember this moment. Remember that how people treat you is often about them, not you. And remember that you decide what to do with rejection, whether it breaks you or builds you." The players nodded solemnly, clearly moved by what they were witnessing. Coach Mitchell stepped forward. "Mr. Jordan, thank you for sharing this with our teams. This lesson is worth more than any basketball clinic could be." Jordan nodded, then turned back to Coach Durham. The old man was wiping tears from his eyes with a handkerchief. "There's one more thing," Jordan said, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a small box. "I brought something for you." Before he could explain further, a loud clang echoed through the gym. Marcus had leaned too far forward, bumping against a metal trash can near the door. It tipped over, the sound amplified in the quiet gym. Everyone turned toward the noise. "Who's there?" Jordan called out. Caught. Marcus froze. There was nowhere to hide, no explanation he could give. Slowly, he stepped into view, his face burning with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice small in the large space. "I didn't mean to spy. I wanted to see what would happen." Coach Mitchell frowned. "Young man, you shouldn't be here. This is a private meeting." But Jordan studied Marcus with an expression more curious than angry. "You're the young man with the good question. Marcus, right?" Marcus nodded, expecting to be scolded or sent away. To his surprise, Jordan beckoned him forward. "Come here." Uncertain, Marcus walked slowly onto the court, aware of all the eyes watching him. The basketball players whispered among themselves, probably wondering why Jordan was calling over a freshman nobody. As Marcus approached center court, standing nervously between the basketball legend and the elderly coach, he had no idea that what happened next would change the course of his life. "Marcus," Jordan said, "since you're here, maybe you can help us with something." Marcus swallowed hard, looking up at the towering figure of Michael Jordan. "Me?" Jordan nodded, then turned to Coach Durham. "Coach, this young man asked me a question. Today, that reminded me of why I wanted to meet with you." The elderly teacher studied Marcus with rheumy eyes. "What did you ask him, son?" "I asked what he did the day after he got cut from the varsity team," Marcus answered, his voice steadier than he expected. Coach Durham's face softened with understanding. "The day after. That's the one that counts, isn't it?" "Exactly," Jordan agreed. He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus here is like I was in some ways, smart, determined, but dealing with people who don't see his potential yet. Marcus felt strange hearing Jordan describe him this way, as if the basketball legend somehow understood his daily struggles. Coach Durham, Jordan continued, I'd like you to tell these young men what you observed about me after I got cut. Not just what you thought at the time, but what you saw over the next year. The old coach took a deep breath, leaning on his cane. After you didn't make varsity, I expected you to quit, or at least slow down. Most kids do when they face rejection. He shook his head slowly. But you did the opposite. I'd see you in the gym before school, working on your game. I'd hear from other teachers about how you were playing at the park until dark. Coach Durham looked at the basketball players in the bleachers. I've coached hundreds of players over 35 years. Never saw anyone transform himself like Michael did that year. He grew physically, yes, but his determination was what set him apart. Jordan nodded, then addressed the team. The point isn't that I became a great basketball player. The point is that I chose my response to failure. That's what I want you to take from today. He turned back to Marcus. And that applies to whatever court you're playing on. Basketball, academics, computers, anything. Marcus nodded, trying to process the fact that Michael Jordan was giving him personal advice in front of the entire basketball program. As the moment stretched, Coach Mitchell cleared his throat. Should we proceed with our scheduled meeting, Mr. Jordan? Yes, Jordan replied. But first, I have something for Coach Durham. He handed the small box to the elderly teacher. Coach Durham opened it with shaky hands to reveal a simple black bracelet. I've worn one like this for years, Jordan explained. No one has ever known what the words on it mean. Coach Durham squinted at the engraving on the bracelet. Thanks for the laugh. Emotion crossed the old man's face as he realized the significance. You've carried that memory all this time? Not as a grudge, Jordan clarified, as a reminder. Sometimes, our greatest motivation comes from unexpected places. He gestured to the teams in the bleachers. I'd like you to share this story with them. I'll meet with the coaches to give everyone some privacy. Jordan motioned for Coach Mitchell and his assistants to follow him to a corner of the gym. Before leaving, he turned to Marcus. Wait for me when this is done. I'd like to talk with you more. Stunned, Marcus could only nod. As Jordan walked away, Coach Durham lowered himself onto a nearby bench, the basketball teams gathering around him in a semicircle. Marcus hesitated, unsure if he should stay or go. You too, young man, Coach Durham called. This concerns you as well. For the next 20 minutes, the elderly coach shared stories about young Michael Jordan that none of them had ever heard. He described Jordan's transformation from a disappointed sophomore to a dominant player, emphasizing the work ethic that made it possible. The Michael Jordan you know from highlights and commercials, that person was built through thousands of hours when no one was watching, Coach Durham said. When you were asleep, he was working. When you were playing video games, he was working. When you were hanging out with friends, he was working. As he spoke, Marcus noticed Jordan in deep conversation with the coaches across the gym. Several times, Jordan checked his watch, as if waiting for something or someone. When Coach Durham finished his story, the players thanked him respectfully. Many had a new thoughtfulness in their expressions, as if reevaluating their own approaches to the game. As the teams were dismissed to the locker room, Marcus lingered, remembering Jordan's request to wait. Tyler Jenkins passed by, giving Marcus a curious look. Why does Jordan want to talk to you? Tyler asked, his usual mockery absent, replaced by genuine confusion. I don't know, Marcus answered honestly. Before Tyler could respond, Jordan returned to center court, where Coach Durham was still seated on the bench. "Thank you for sharing with them," Jordan said to the elderly teacher. "It was an honor," Coach Durham replied. "I've carried the shame of that moment for decades. I never imagined you'd turn it into something positive. We all have choices about how we respond to life's moments," Jordan said. "That's what I wanted them, and Marcus, to understand." As Coach Durham prepared to leave, Jordan helped him to his feet. The old man's eyes were clear now, as if a burden had been lifted. "I should get back to class," Marcus said, suddenly remembering he was missing his afternoon lessons. "Actually," Jordan said, "I've spoken with your principal. You're excused for the rest of the day." He checked his watch again. "There's someone else I'd like you to meet. Someone who should be arriving any minute." As if on cue, Principal Marshall entered the gym with another visitor, an elderly man Marcus had never seen before. This man looked to be in his late 70s, dressed in a suit that seemed slightly too large for his thin frame. He walked with slow, careful steps. Jordan's expression changed when he saw the visitor, a mix of anticipation and something else Marcus couldn't identify. Respect, perhaps, or admiration. "Marcus," Jordan said quietly, "that man changed my life, and I think he might have something valuable to share with you too." "Who is he?" Marcus asked, watching as the elderly visitor approached. "His name is Dr. Desmond Howard. He was the first black principal of Laney High," Jordan explained. "After I graduated, he started a program for students who showed promise in areas beyond athletics. Technical fields, science, mathematics." Jordan looked directly at Marcus. "Fields like computer science." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized what might be happening. Was Jordan connecting him with a mentor? Someone who could help guide his interest in coding? As Dr. Howard drew closer, Jordan stepped forward to greet him warmly. The two men embraced like old friends. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," Jordan said to the former principal. "For you, Michael, anything," Dr. Howard replied, his voice strong despite his age. "Now, where's this young man you told me about?" Jordan turned and beckoned Marcus forward. "Dr. Howard, this is Marcus Washington, the student I mentioned." As Marcus stepped forward to shake Dr. Howard's hand, he had no idea that this meeting would open doors he'd never imagined possible. "It's nice to meet you, Dr. Howard," Marcus said, shaking the elderly man's hand. "The pleasure is mine, young man," Dr. Howard replied, his grip surprisingly firm for his age. "Michael tells me you have quite a talent for computers." Marcus glanced at Jordan, surprised he had mentioned this. "I enjoy coding, sir. I'm building an educational game right now." Dr. Howard's eyes lit up. "Is that so? What kind of game?" As Marcus described his project, a game that taught basic coding concepts through puzzles, Dr. Howard listened intently, nodding with genuine interest. Jordan stood back, watching their interaction with a slight smile. After a few minutes, Principal Twide Marshall approached. "Mr. Jordan, we should probably move this conversation. The next gym class will be arriving soon." Jordan nodded. "Dr. Howard, Coach Durham, would you mind joining me and Marcus in the conference room? There's something important I'd like to discuss with all of you." The group followed Principal Marshall down the hallway to a small conference room typically used for faculty meetings. The space felt cramped with Jordan's imposing presence, but somehow also more significant because of it. Once everyone was seated, Jordan remained standing, looking thoughtful. Marcus noticed he seemed slightly nervous, an expression he'd never associated with the confident basketball legend. "I want to thank you all for being here," Jordan began. "Each of you represents an important part of Laney's history, and my own personal journey." He turned to Coach Durham. You represent my past, a moment of failure that became fuel. To Dr. Howard, you represent the foundation of educational excellence that helped shape not just athletes, but scholars. And finally, to Marcus. And you represent the future, the next generation that will build on what we've established. Marcus felt a weight of responsibility with those words. Why had Jordan included him in this gathering of important figures from the school's history? Jordan took a deep breath before continuing. The reason I wanted all of you here is because I'm announcing something today that brings these threads together. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. This is the charter for the new Michael Jordan Foundation for Educational Innovation at Laney High School. Principal Marshall's eyes widened. Michael, we had no idea. I wanted it to be a surprise, Jordan said with a small smile. The foundation will fund 3 initiatives: athletic development, academic scholarships, and, most importantly for today's conversation, a technology and innovation center. Dr. Howard nodded approvingly. The world has changed since my time. As principal, technology skills are essential now. Exactly, Jordan agreed. And that's where Marcus comes in. All eyes turned to Marcus, who felt his heart rate quicken. When I was at Laney, my talents were recognized and developed. Eventually, Jordan said, with a glance at Coach Durham. But what about students whose gifts aren't on the basketball court? Who's developing their potential? He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. I've spent less than a day at Laney, but I've already identified one student with exceptional promise in a different area. How many others might be here, needing just a little encouragement and the right resources? Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Had Michael Jordan really noticed something special in him? The Technology Center will be located where the old audiovisual room is now, Jordan continued. It will have the latest computers, software, and tools for students interested in programming, design, robotics, and other technical fields. He turned to Dr. Howard. And I'm hoping you'll serve as an advisor to help establish a mentorship program, similar to the one you created years ago. The elderly educator nodded solemnly. I would be honored. Jordan then looked at Coach Durham. I'd like you to share your perspective too, how developing talent requires both encouragement and challenge. The old coach seemed moved beyond words. He simply nodded, his eyes glistening. And Marcus, Jordan said finally, I'd like you to be involved as well, as the first student advisor to the Technology Center Planning Committee. Your input would be valuable as we design a space that works for actual students, not just what adults think students need. Marcus sat in stunned silence. This had to be a dream. The most famous basketball player in history was asking for his help? I don't know what to say, Marcus managed. Say yes, Jordan smiled. Sometimes opportunities come from unexpected places. Yes, Marcus replied firmly. Definitely yes. As they discussed preliminary plans, Marcus's mind raced. He thought about the other students like him, kids with technical interests who didn't fit the typical Laney High success story. This center could change everything for them. After about 20 minutes, Principal Marshall checked her watch. I hate to interrupt, but Mr. Jordan's schedule has one more commitment before he leaves. Jordan nodded, rising from his chair. I need a few minutes alone with Coach Durham, if that's all right. The others prepared to leave, but Jordan placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Actually, Marcus, would you mind waiting outside? There's something else I'd like to discuss with you. Afterward, curious but trying not to show it, Marcus nodded and followed Principal Marshall and Dr. Howard out of the room. As the door closed behind them, he couldn't help wondering what Jordan wanted to say to Coach Durham in private. Principal Marshall escorted Dr. Howard to her office to discuss the foundation in more detail, leaving Marcus alone in the hallway. He leaned against the wall opposite the conference room door, still processing everything that had happened. A few minutes passed, then a few more. Marcus heard muffled voices from inside, but couldn't make out the words. Whatever Jordan was saying to Coach Durham, it seemed intense and private. Finally, the door opened. Coach Durham emerged first, his eyes red-rimmed, but his expression peaceful. He nodded to Marcus as he passed, patting him gently on the shoulder. Without speaking, "Marcus," Jordan called from inside the room. "Come in." Marcus entered to find Jordan standing by the window, looking out at the school grounds. Without turning, Jordan spoke. "Did you know basketball was invented by a teacher? James Naismith. He was trying to create an indoor game that would keep his students active during winter." "I didn't know that," Marcus replied. "A teacher," Jordan repeated, turning to face Marcus. "Not a professional athlete. Education and athletics have always been connected." He gestured for Marcus to sit. "What I'm about to tell you has never left this school. Something that happened here that changed the course of my life." Marcus sat forward, instinctively sensing the importance of what was coming. "You know I got cut from varsity as a sophomore, and how Coach Durham laughed with those players," Jordan began. "What I didn't tell anyone today was what happened afterward." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper. 3 weeks after I got cut, I found this in my locker." He carefully unfolded the paper and handed it to Marcus. It was a note, the ink faded, but still legible. Marcus read it aloud. "Jordan, I was wrong about you. I've been watching you practice. Keep working like this and you won't just make varsity. Next year, you'll be the best player Laney has ever seen. The great ones use disappointment as fuel. You might be one of the great ones." "Coach D," Marcus looked up, confused. "But I thought Coach Durham laughed at you. Why would he write this?" Jordan took the note back, carefully refolding it. "That's what I wanted to ask him today. For 40 years, I've carried this note, never knowing for sure who Coach D was. I assumed it was Coach Durham, trying to make amends. That's partly why I wanted to thank him." "What did he say?" Marcus asked, then quickly added, "If you don't mind me asking." Jordan sat down across from Marcus, his expression thoughtful. "He told me he didn't write it. He admitted laughing that day, admitted everything. But he swears he never left me any note." Marcus felt a chill. "Then who did?" "Coach Desmond," Jordan said quietly. "Dr. Howard's son, who was an assistant coach. Back then. Marcus Desmond. He died in a car accident a year after I graduated. I never got to thank him." The revelation hung in the air between them. Marcus sat silent, processing what this meant. "For 40 years, Jordan continued, I thought the same person who laughed at me had seen my potential and encouraged me. I was wrong. One man doubted me, another believed in me, and they both shaped who I became." He leaned forward, his intense gaze fixed on Marcus. "Life is rarely simple. The people who laugh at you and the people who lift you up, they're all part of your journey. What matters is what you do with both experiences." As Marcus absorbed these words, he realized he was being given a gift far more valuable than a technology center or a mentorship program. He was being trusted with the true story behind Michael Jordan's legendary determination, a story no one else knew. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked softly. "Because you reminded me of myself," Jordan replied. "Not because you love basketball, but because you have that same look in your eyes when you talk about coding. It's the look of someone who's found their court, and I want you to know that both the doubters and the believers will shape your journey. He carefully returned the folded note to his pocket. Sometimes our greatest motivation comes from proving the doubters wrong, and sometimes it comes from proving the believers right. You'll need both. As their conversation ended and Jordan prepared to leave Laney High, Marcus understood why the basketball legend had really returned. Not for celebration or nostalgia, but to set the record straight in his own heart and to pass on the most valuable lesson he'd learned to the next generation. The final bell of the day rang as Jordan and Marcus walked together down the main hallway toward the front entrance. Students changing classes stopped and stared, some pulling out phones to take pictures. Jordan nodded politely, but kept moving, his hand on Marcus's shoulder guiding him through the growing crowd. "Your security team is probably wondering where you are," Marcus said, noticing they were alone except for the students around them. Jordan smiled. "They know where to find me. I wanted this walk to be just us." As they passed the trophy case, Jordan paused briefly. Behind the glass, his basketball achievements were prominently displayed. Newspaper clippings, his old jersey, photos of him as a Laney student. But Jordan's attention fixed on something else, a smaller display of academic achievements, including a math competition trophy from 1979. "The year I got cut from varsity, I almost quit school entirely," Jordan said quietly, so only Marcus could hear. "Coach Desmond, the one who left me that note, he convinced me to channel my energy into everything, not just basketball. My grades improved that year, not because I suddenly loved math, but because I had something to prove." Marcus nodded, understanding completely. It was how he felt about his coding projects. They were his way of proving himself. "The world will try to put you in a box," Jordan continued as they resumed walking. "Basketball player? Computer geek? Whatever label seems easiest. Your job is to break out of that box." They reached the front entrance where a black SUV waited. Jordan's security team stood nearby, speaking quietly into earpieces. Several local news crews had gathered, hoping for a final statement. Before stepping outside, Jordan turned to Marcus. "Wait here a moment. There's something I want to give you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, similar to Fee, the one he'd shown Coach Durham. "Open it later, when you're alone." Marcus took the box, surprised by its weight. "Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for everything today." "Thank me by proving me right about you," Jordan replied with a half smile. "I expect big things." With a final nod, Jordan stepped outside to a flurry of camera flashes and shouted questions. His security team immediately surrounded him, creating a path to the waiting vehicle. Marcus watched through the glass doors as Jordan answered a few questions for the reporters. Though he couldn't hear the words, he could see the respect with which the basketball legend addressed each person. No rush, no impatience, just the focused attention he'd shown throughout the day. As Jordan climbed into the SUV, he glanced back at the school. For a brief moment, his eyes met Marcus's through the door. The basketball legend gave a slight nod, then disappeared into the vehicle. Marcus stood watching as the convoy of black SUVs pulled away from Laney High. Only when they turned the corner and disappeared did he remember the small box in his hand. Curious but wanting privacy, he ducked into an empty classroom. Inside the box was a bracelet, identical to the one Jordan had shown Coach Durham. A simple black band with the words, "Thanks for the laugh," engraved on it. Beneath the bracelet was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "Marcus, whenever someone laughs at your dreams or tells you you're not good enough, I want you to wear this. Let their doubt fuel you, not defeat you. 40 years from now, when you've achieved things that would make all of us proud, find someone who needs to hear your story Pass it on. MJ. Marcus stared at the bracelet, turning it over in his hands. Around him, the empty classroom slowly darkened as clouds passed over the sun outside. The weight of Jordan's words and his expectation settled on Marcus's shoulders. Could he live up to such a challenge? Could he turn the doubts of people like Tyler into motivation strong enough to drive him forward? The afternoon announcements crackled over the intercom, breaking his reverie. Among various club meetings and sports updates, Principal Marshall's voice added, "A special thank you to everyone for making Michael Jordan's visit a success today." Mr. Jordan expressed how impressed he was with our students and faculty. More information about his new foundation and the Technology Center will be shared in the coming weeks. As the announcements ended, Marcus slipped the bracelet onto his wrist. It felt strange, but somehow right. A tangible reminder of everything he'd learned today. The classroom door opened, and Marcus quickly pocketed the note. To his surprise, Tyler Jenkins walked in, followed by 2 other basketball players. "There you are," Tyler said, his usual mocking tone absent. "Everyone's talking about you and Jordan." Marcus tensed, preparing for ridicule. "What about it?" Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "What did he say to you after we left the gym?" Considering how to answer, Marcus noticed something different in Tyler's expression. Not jealousy or anger, but genuine curiosity, maybe even respect. "He told me about the note that motivated him when he was our age," Marcus replied carefully. "And about his foundation's new technology center." "Technology center?" one of the other players asked. Marcus nodded. "For students interested in computer, science, coding, robotics, that kind of thing." "Like you," Tyler said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, like me." An awkward silence filled the room. Tyler glanced at the bracelet on Marcus's wrist, but didn't comment on it. "Look," Tyler finally said, "I wanted to say, I've been a jerk to you, making fun of your computer stuff. Coach Mitchell talked to us after Jordan left, said we need to respect everyone's talents, not just athletic ones." Marcus was so surprised he couldn't immediately respond. "Anyway," Tyler continued, "Jordan picked you out of everyone. He saw something in you. That's pretty cool." It wasn't exactly an apology, but Marcus recognized the effort it took for Tyler to say even this much. "Thanks," Marcus replied. After a moment, he added, "If you ever want to learn some coding basics, I could show you. It's not that different from learning plays in basketball, just a different language." Tyler seemed to consider this. "Maybe. My dad says I need to think about more than just basketball." As the boys left the classroom together, their conversation shifting to other aspects of Jordan's visit, Marcus felt something changing inside him. The insecurity that had been his constant companion was being replaced by something else. Not arrogance, but a quiet confidence that came from being seen, truly seen, by someone who recognized potential. Outside, the afternoon sun had emerged from behind the clouds, casting long shadows across the campus. Students were heading to after-school activities or boarding buses home. Everything looked the same as it had yesterday, but Marcus knew Laney High, and he himself, would never be quite the same again. He texted his mother that he'd be late coming home. There was something he needed to do first. 30 minutes later, Marcus sat in the school library, his laptop open before him. With renewed focus, he worked on his coding project, the educational game he'd mentioned to Dr. Howard. Ideas flowed more freely now, his fingers flying across the keyboard with new confidence. As he worked, he occasionally glanced at the bracelet on his wrist, not as a reminder of those who had laughed at him, but as a promise to himself about who he would become. The light outside faded, as afternoon turned to evening. The library emptied except for Marcus and the elderly librarian, Mrs. Chen, who seemed content to let him work past the usual closing time. "You've been busy," she commented, passing by his table. "Something inspired you today?" Marcus looked up from his screen, where lines of code filled the display. "Yeah, you could say that." "Must have been quite something," she said, noticing the intensity of his focus. Marcus thought about everything that had happened. Jordan's speech, the revelation about the note, the foundation announcement, the bracelet now on his wrist. "It was," he replied simply. "But the real something is what happens next." Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly. "That's always the way, isn't it? The most important day isn't the one where you get inspired. It's the day after, when you decide what to do with that inspiration." Her words echoed Jordan's lesson so perfectly that Marcus paused his typing. "Did you hear him say that today?" "Say what?" Mrs. Chen looked confused. "Michael Jordan, about the day after being the most important." She shook her head. "I wasn't at the assembly. Had to keep the library open." She tapped the side of her head. "But some wisdom is universal. The great ones all know it." As Marcus returned to his work, he realized she was right. The lesson Jordan had shared wasn't just about basketball, or even about Jordan himself. It was about the human spirit, about how we all face moments of doubt and rejection, and how those moments can either break us or transform us. Later that evening, as Marcus finally packed up his laptop, he made a decision. 40 years from now, when students walked into the Michael Jordan Technology Center at Laney High, maybe they'd see his name somewhere, not as famous as Jordan's, certainly, but as someone who had taken the legend's lesson to heart and built something meaningful with it. And perhaps someday he would find his own discouraged young person who needed to hear this story. He would tell them about a basketball player who was cut from his high school team, about a math teacher who laughed, about a coach who left an anonymous note of encouragement, and about how those moments of doubt and belief shaped a legend. Most importantly, he would tell them about a day when Michael Jordan returned to where it all began, not to be celebrated, but to pass on the true secret of his success, a secret that had left everyone who heard it speechless. The greatest victory isn't proving others wrong. It's thanking them for the motivation while proving yourself right. As Marcus stepped out into the cool evening air, the bracelet a comfortable weight on his wrist, he knew the real story was just beginning. We hope you enjoyed this tale of transformation, perseverance, and the power of turning doubt into determination. Where are you listening from today? We'd love to know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content like this. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family who might need a reminder that setbacks can become the foundation for success. Together, we can spread kindness and awareness through the power of storytelling.